Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
Innovative Thinkers episode number 446, Innovative Thinkers.
Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Our next guest is a leadership consultant, self-leadership coach specializing in breakups, divorce, relationship, two-time best-selling and two-time award-winning author. Welcome, Emmi Fortin.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business?
Sure, thank you. So I am a huge supporter of people sharing their stories to help them in whatever way is serving them best in their life at the moment. So when I work with people to develop leadership skills, it's how can you tell your personal story so that you can more deeply connect with your team, your audience, your community, your clients, and also get to know yourself better through the story writing process. I also help people with self-leadership skills who are going through life transitions that could be really challenging. I've worked primarily in the area of breakups, divorce, and relationships to help people lay their foundation and have an action plan for how to move forward with their life.
Who is your ideal client?
My ideal client is someone who is ready for change. Maybe they want to elevate their life in some way. They want an action plan for how they can start taking steps to move forward and make that progress every day, every week. And maybe they're struggling with self-confidence, happiness. Maybe they're struggling with wanting to bring people together and have deeper connections. And so those are some of the examples of what I specialize in.
Emmi, tell us your story. Tell us your backstory. How did you get into this work?
Yeah, so it's what I'm doing now is near and dear to my heart because I basically experienced everything that I'm going to tell you. So I actually I'm a former educator of high school biology for 16 years. And while I was a teacher, I found myself in this on and off tumultuous relationship where we were both salsa dancers, love music and dancing. And so we were in that world together. And it was a really, really challenging time in my life because that relationship was not healthy. And so I found myself struggling so much with it that I had a really lucid moment where I knew I wanted to help other people who were in similar situations get out of that rut that they were stuck in, just like I was. And so fast forward, I decided to become a breakup and relationship coach. I've been helping people also reconnect with themselves, gain clarity, and pull themselves out of their rut. Now, while I was in that relationship, I started writing. And I was writing these little vignette stories, basically to process my emotions and work through everything I was going through. And over time, I started thinking, hey, this would actually be a really great longer story. And so I decided to put all of those into the form of a memoir. And so I published my memoir last year. It was one of the most, I think, important pieces in my life to not only healing and forgiveness, but also to my personal growth and progress. And so I think that story can be so powerful for helping people connect with each other through similar experiences, but also for your own personal growth. You learn things about yourself that maybe you never would have if you hadn't kind of ventured into that writing journey.
Tell us about your book, your memoir, and where can they purchase it?
So my memoir is a lot more like a spicy, entertaining novel, but it is a memoir. It's all based on my life. It's called Who is Your Red Dress? One Woman's Quest to Break Up with a Love Addiction. And it's available on Amazon, and you can order it through, major book publication companies like Barnes and Noble, things like that. And so I never thought I was going to be an author, never even thought crossed my mind. And so after I did that and had such a great time with the process, I actually decided to continue writing. And so I now have 2 published journals, and my third one is actually coming out within the next couple of days.
I love that title. Talk about naming it. You talk about spice and red, and how did you come up with that title?
Yeah, so that actually was born in one moment. I was lying in bed next to this person that I had been on and off with. And I just, I'm a salsa dancer. And so, the red dress is kind of this quintessential symbol that you see in movies, right? Like salsa dancing, you think of the little red dress because it symbolizes, seduction, passion. It's tantalizing, but could also be dangerous. And so I looked over and I was like, man, like this man is just like a red dress. And so, I ran into another room, grabbed my phone. I just started writing things down. They were just like shooting into my head, all these ideas. And that very first story that I wrote called Red Dress became the first chapter of my memoir.
When you're unpacking your story, and I know I don't want to steal the thunder because I everyone should read the book. What chapter really pulls you? Or I know there's probably many, but if you had to name one and tell us the backstory of that story.
Yeah, for sure. And I totally agree with what you're saying. It is a very, or at least it was for me, a very emotional process. So I would say the chapter that most resembles that is called Flying Solo in Spain. And it comes right after kind of the lowest point of the book where I'm just really struggling, with this man in this relationship. And I decide that I need to change my patterns. I need to break out of my cycle. And I also knew that I wanted to grow my own independence, my own competence. And so I was like, I need to leave the country. I need to get myself away from this man. And so I decided to take a solo trip to Spain. And as I was writing that chapter, it not only brought back tons of amazing nostalgic memories of being in Spain, but it was the biggest highlight of my own personal kind of growth and freedom from this state that I had been keeping myself in, this circumstance. As I explore 3 different cities in Spain, I'm, meeting people, I'm trying things and doing things that, are out of my comfort zone. And there's just so many tremendous wins that when I come back, at the end of the chapter, it's like, how can I apply all of these things to my real life that I experienced on this trip?
Did you find love in Spain?
I did not find long-lasting love in Spain. However, there may have been a vacation boyfriend.
So you found some lovely moments.
Yes.
Now, was that your first time, Emmi, going to Spain?
Yes, that was my first time ever doing a solo trip, first time in Spain. I really had only done one girls' trip to Portugal prior to that, and travel with my family as a child, but that was really the first time that I had ever traveled by myself out of the country.
Talk about salsa. I love, love, love dancing. So we have that synergy besides the storytelling. Tell us about your love and getting into salsa dancing.
Yeah, salsa and dancing in general gives you such a deep connection with your body, which I think is important because we spend so much of our time in our heads thinking about things and worrying about things that I know for me, when I would go dancing, it was a way to kind of escape all of that and really just be in my body in the moment and, express myself through movement. Salsa is also, as I'm sure you've seen, you're dancing with a partner. It can be very close and kind of an intimate dance. And so I always found there was a line of, really enjoying the dance for what it is. But then also kind of for me, it was taking on this like addictive quality of like needing to go dancing every week to kind of get these like fixes. And of course, to see that person. But I think what's also interesting is there's so many people I've met in any social dancing scene, because I do lots of different kinds of dances. And they talk about these similar kinds of relationships that are formed where, they're not very clearly defined. It's like you're confused about what is going on. They're high passion, and it doesn't set yourself up for a healthy, sustainable, fulfilling relationship. And so I think these kinds of patterns are actually very common in these kinds of scenes in particular.
Someone is going through a divorce or a breakup, what advice would you give them?
The biggest piece of advice is to make sure that you are setting aside some time to reconnect with yourself on a consistent basis, because a lot of times the stress and the emotions are so overwhelming that we can be making choices based on our emotional state that don't really serve where we're trying to get to. One of the first questions I always ask people when I work with them is, how do you want to feel on a regular basis as consistently as possible? And from that, we determine what steps you need to take that are going to get you there. But without the vision of where you're going, it's a lot easier to dwell in where you are, which during the end of a relationship is usually a lot of negative emotions. So reconnecting with yourself for sure. And, get a professional who can help you with the structure, who can help you be a sounding board. And, rather than just taking the advice of your friends and loved ones. They mean well, but it's not always good advice.
And as a relationship coach, and I'm sure you have many clients you've seen, without mentioning names, if you can share a success story and what that meant to that person and to you as a coach.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite part for sure of working with people, is seeing the progress and the wins that they have. My most recent client, who just finished the Wake Up From Your Breakup program, in her writing, like her testimonial to me to kind of share her feedback, she mentioned numerous times that the skills she acquired were life-changing. And I've had other people tell me this as well, because you're essentially breaking patterns. You're breaking cycles that you've been in that maybe you weren't aware of, that are causing you to be in these situations. And a lot of times we repeat these things. The biggest realization were that this particular person was thinking, I actually get to choose how I'm looking at things. You don't have to choose the catastrophic thinking or the negative thinking. You have this strategy to reframe your thinking into something that can actually support you in your progress. What I always tell people is, it's not about trying to, forget that any of this stuff ever happened, or forget your ex, or never feel sad again, because you're a human. So that's going to happen. But the key thing is, when those feelings and thoughts do come up, how do you manage them? How do you respond? And so she was telling me that, this tool that she has, of she gets to create her own narrative around what's happening and how she gets to attach meaning to it or not, has been really powerful. And I've had people tell me that, they're choosing to do a different thing now than the old them would have done in a certain situation.
What's your biggest takeaway that you want the audience to leave with from our conversation today?
The biggest takeaway is that everyone can learn self-leadership skills, which are the things that I'm talking about, self-management, self-discovery, self-growth, self-acceptance. You can learn the skills to become the leader of your own life, whether it's just, you with yourself, you with a partner, you with your family, you with friends, or if you're a leader of more people, a leader in a business, a leader, a CEO. As long as you are growing and evolving and developing those skills, then you are going to all of the things that you're doing are going to ripple out into everybody else's life that you touch and that you impact.
There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or a business that's dominating that you admire and why.
I don't know that I have one in particular, but I do really love to watch interviews with very successful entrepreneurs so that I can hear their backstory and where they started from and the way that they, like what's the path that they took for their own growth personally, but also the growth of their business. So recently, I would say most recently, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I've been watching a lot of like Alex Hormozy because he's just like quadrupled down on his social media posts and he talks a lot about business and growth. And so I do find it fascinating how people go from zero to, like millions or billions. I think it's a really cool hero's journey.
I want you to have a monologue. I want you to name this person, living or not. And this person has inspired you so much. Who is that person? And what are you saying to that person?
This person is pretty much any person who fearlessly is themselves authentically in everything that they're doing. And so I would say thank you for having the courage to always be yourself, for having the courage to do things that you believe in that then create a ripple effect and impact other people, because it inspires me to also do the same.
When you talk about leadership, and we're talking about the workforce, and there are so many challenges, we're seeing a lot of ebb and flows in the workforce and leaders managing their teams. What advice would you give regarding leadership?
That is definitely a problem, people not being able to keep employees and, people having so many different opportunities than maybe there were before. I think it's super important to create not only a deep connection on a human level with your team or who you're working with, but also in that connection, you're also sharing a common purpose that matters. Like each person feels like they have an important role. And because you have shared, your story as a human so authentically and openly, these people want to work with you. They want to be a part of a team with you. I think when you can introduce as many human elements of yourself as possible and allow other people to do the same, I think it creates a special kind of connection that is different from, just the regular like team building activities.
Who are your top two influencers and what lessons did they teach you?
So when I was very first starting out, I used to watch a lot of a YouTube show called Impact Theory. It's also a podcast with Tom Bilyeu. And as I mentioned, he interviewed many, many very successful people. And so that podcast has been very influential on my life because I get to learn from people who are already doing the thing. And it gives you ideas about what you can do next on your journey. And you said two? So I actually also watched a lot of his wife, Lisa Bilyeu, who does Women of Impact. And so very similar ideas, only she focuses on women's stories in particular.
Emmi, what is your zone of genius?
My zone of genius is being able to truly hear and understand what someone is expressing to me and be able to kind of mirror that back to them so that they can become more clear on what they either need to or want to work on or where they really want to be. So I think expression is definitely a skill of mine, helping other people do that.
How did you get here? When you talk about becoming a coach, talk about that journey. Did you, and that aha moment when you knew that was your lane of your zone of genius and where you should go? Talk about that discovery process.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was a high school biology teacher for 16 years, and I really did enjoy working with the students. But I knew that I wanted to start helping people in a different way based on what I had experienced in my own life. And so I think that because of my own personal experience, I felt like I could really, really resonate with what other people are going through. And so I took those steps to essentially change my identity because, I was saying I am a teacher for so many years. And then I had to, really step out of my comfort zone and say, I am a breakup coach, I am a leadership coach. And so I think the journey for me has been giving myself permission for self reinvention and allowing myself to evolve when my intuition is really nagging at me to do so. I did stay in teaching, I think, longer than I could have. And I'm really proud of the decision. Not that there's anything wrong with teaching. I just knew I wanted to head in a different direction. And so I think it really changes your life, and it can make you feel really free when you allow yourself to step into uncertainty, but also have, the belief in yourself that it will all work out and you'll figure it out.
So that's very powerful when you talk about the self reinvention, reinventing yourself, the changing your identity, and that freeing process, that discovery process. And so many of us will resist that change. Someone's listening and they know that where they're at, they should not be, and they're ready to move forward. And I like what you said about freeing when you can actually accept that new discovery, but going through there, talk to that person that's trying to get to the other side.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, it's all about allowing yourself to imagine possibilities, because I think we keep ourselves very limited based on what we think we can or can't do. But if you just allow yourself to be like, maybe I could be a writer. If I was a writer, what would that look like? And just allow yourself to go off and like be a kid again, use your imagination, right? That's what happened to me. Like I said, never thought I'd be an author. And I was like, well, I'll just start writing, see what happens, right? Because who cares? No one's reading it, right? And then, after I started writing, I was like, well, what if I could be an author? And I allowed myself to see what that would look like. And then after I was an author, I was like, well, what if I could help people with the same thing? And actually, what if I could leave my job? I mean, that was a huge, huge choice, leaving the kind of comfort of a, retirement plan and all these things, that teaching brings to you. But it's just allowing yourself the what if, because you could allow yourself to go into catastrophic thinking, like, oh my God, what if it doesn't work? What if all these things? But I call it a game. What I like to play when my brain goes in that direction is, if there's a what if that's catastrophic, then that means that there is an equal and opposite wonderful what if, right? So what if my book bombs? Well, it could, but what if it's a bestseller, right? And then allow yourself to expand on that vision and get curious about what that would feel like. So that was a long explanation to your question.
No. That was perfect. And what can we do right now to support you and your business, Emmi?
I would say anybody who is looking to expand in their life, you are a perfect match for what I have to offer. We can go into, story writing to explore that further. We can do coaching. I have journals that can help your expansion. I would say, come on over, follow me on social media, get on my email list, let's have a conversation, book a call with me, and let's just talk about what your goals are. How can you imagine those possibilities for yourself?
We're headed into another year, 2024. What is your next?
I definitely have more books and journals, I'm sure, on deck, possibly a Be Confident and Happy 30-day challenge coming up in 2024. I definitely want to grow my story writing intensive. And I'm on a mission to help, 20,000 people really tap into their strengths, their power, and expand.
Let's talk about redo from the standpoint, if is there an event or a period in your life that if you could redo, you would redo, and why?
I do often think about that relationship that I wrote the book about. I was like, if I had never met him, if I never got myself into that, would that be a better choice? Like maybe that would have been great if I didn't have to go through all that, right? But I do always come to the same conclusion, which is if I hadn't met him, I most likely would have met someone else that would have been a similar situation. Because at that point in my life, I hadn't done all the personal growth and development work that I really needed to do at that time that relationship prompted. It basically like forced me into doing it. And I think at some point in everybody's life, you do come up against a challenge or multiple challenges that force you into discomfort and, make you have to either change personally or make changes in your life that will ultimately, hopefully, serve the highest good of yourself and everyone else that's in your sphere.
And from a personal perspective, what do you find is the hardest part for someone that's going through a breakup or divorce and getting them to the other side?
I do find, after talking to hundreds of people, that the lack of hope for a bright future tends to people stuck and also loneliness. And so that comes back to the two things that, I've been talking to you about, which is making sure that you're creating a vision for yourself, that, you have the steps to work toward that can help you with the hope piece. And then also doing things that connect you to other like-minded people, like sharing stories or, just like creating your own social network that supports where you want to go. Because a lot of people isolate when they're going through a hard time, especially relationships.
Someone is listening and they're saying, as a relationship coach, Emmi is specializing in divorce, breakups. Is she also focusing with individuals who have gone through losing their spouse from death? Is there a similarity or is that a separate lane?
I would say that it is different. There's a different kind of grief, and it isn't necessarily, I would say, my specialty. However, I do think there are similarities as well, which is learning skills and practices to help you come to acceptance and peace with what is, which is similar to people going through an ending of relationships. A lot of times you are not accepting that it's over. And so accepting the loss of a loved one through death, even though it's different, you can still implement similar practices. And then again, the vision.
Let's talk about becoming Emmi. How do you feel about the woman that you have become?
So for a while, I was getting frustrated that, my progress wasn't fast enough, or I wasn't reaching my goals quickly enough. And I can honestly say that right now, I'm actually really happy and proud of where I am, because people are always going to have goals. I'm always going to have goals. And there's always going to be a certain amount of time it takes and skills to learn in order to achieve them. But what I've started doing a lot more of is stopping myself if I am being too harsh with myself and looking back on all the things I have achieved over the past year, over the past 2 years, and giving myself like a pause and some space to actually acknowledge, hey, you published a memoir. Like that takes so much courage. Good for you. Or you've published 2 journals, soon to be 3, that are potentially, changing people's lives. You have coached people who have told you the words out of their mouth. They thank you numerous times for how life-changing their experience in working with you has been. That is how I have become me and someone that I'm proud of versus judgmental of.
Talk about your family when you told them you were becoming this relationship coach and transitioning from becoming a teacher.
They were really supportive. I was actually, they've always been very supportive. I was a little bit nervous though. I was curious. I'm like, oh, what are they going to think? What are they going to say? I knew they would support me ultimately, but yeah, it was actually a lot much easier conversation than I had anticipated. And they're both entrepreneurs. And so they understood that you have, sometimes you just have to grow and shift and change. And if you're being called to do something else and you're not loving what you're doing, then why keep yourself there? Go ahead and explore.
If you lost everything and you had to rebuild in 30 days, what industry would you rebuild and why?
I would definitely stay in my same lane because I think relationships are always going to be a pain point for people and something that people struggle with. And I think I would start with building community first. When I did start my business, I focused so much on like technology, like I had to build a website and I had to do all the social media and all that stuff. But I've definitely learned that grassroots, like start with one person and then you have 2 people and then you have 3 and then you have a little community and then you have your support system and the people who, follow you and are your fans. And so, yeah, I definitely think community would be the first place I would start with helping people build self-esteem.
We've heard that self-care is physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional. Which one is speaking to you today and why?
I would say I always try to be holistic in nature. So I really do just before, I got on this podcast, I did my meditation. So that's important. Right after our podcast, I'm going to Zumba. So I'm going to go dance. I do think the mental and physical, emotional, spiritual, it's all connected. And the more you can stay in touch with each one every day, the more whole you feel.
What breaks your heart?
What breaks my heart is speaking with people who feel very stuck, feel like they have lost a lot of their zest for life, and feel like they don't even know if they can ever feel that again. It's a very low place to be. And so I really enjoy trying to be the light for them to see the light at the end of the tunnel of like almost like a navigational system for them to find their zest for life again.
What brings you joy and fills your cup?
What brings me the most joy is absolutely dancing, especially, with friends around. I love to move my body. I love, rhythm. And I think it's really a huge connection to your soul. It's just like allowing yourself to listen and move and express. Yeah, that brings me a lot of joy.
Emmi, if someone spent a whole day with you, what is something that they would learn about you that they don't know?
I think maybe people are surprised to learn that I'm, I just like all humans, I also have, like self-doubts at times, or I, wonder what I should do next. But even though you have those thoughts, it doesn't necessarily mean anything about you. It just means that you're going through something and you're exploring. And if you ask yourself all the right questions, then you can find the answer.
Give us a snapshot of the last 30 days. What was your biggest win?
The last 30 days, I really pushed hard to create and publish my third journal. And so I basically have been spending the month writing, publishing that, prepping for the launch. And I can definitely say that I'm the most proud of this journal so far because I did not hold back. Like there are so many coaching questions in there that not only are you reflecting, you're also actually doing things that can help you take action. That's what I've been working on over the last 30 days.
How do you celebrate your wins?
I usually tell all my friends and family and anybody who wants to, celebrate that with me. And then again, giving myself just like the acknowledgement and the time and the space. Because I think it's really easy to like do one thing and then just move on to the next thing and move on to the next thing, move on to the next thing. But it's important to give yourself that acknowledgement to say, hey, look what I did.
What's something about publishing that we should know that we don't know?
I know I had to learn this and I'm still learning, very much learning that it is way more than just writing your book. It's knowing all of the other stuff you have to do to launch it and have it be successful. And not even just to, sell books, but just like so people can even be aware that it's out there. Just like any other, search site, algorithms are involved. And so if you want people to actually learn about your book and see that it's there, then, you have to have a marketing and launch in place and, people who are kind of on your team to help you do that.
And Emmi, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
The one question would be, how did you face your fears and insecurities? And the way I did it was I asked myself, do you want to be still doing the same thing for the next 17 years? Do you still want to be feeling how you're feeling right now for the next 17 years? And my answer was no, absolutely not. And so I had to face all of my fears every time in order to get that next step closer to how I wanted to feel as consistently as possible.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Rapid Round of Fun. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the rapid round of fun?
I'm ready.
All right. Your ideal car?
Ooh, kind of sporty. Stick shift.
Your first job?
A CA at my dad's chiropractic office.
You relax doing what?
Laying in the sun with a good book.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Daddy Yankee, Romeo Santos, and Prince Royce. It's a three-way tie.
Your favorite dance song?
Danza Kuduro.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Lots of veggies.
Workout or hit the couch?
Workout.
Your favorite color?
Yellow.
Your favorite holiday?
I would say Thanksgiving.
Emmi Fortin, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and to do business with you, and feel free to leave all your social media handles.
Awesome. Thank you. People can find out more about me at www.emmifortin.com. That's EMMI. They can also email me, info@emmifortin.com. And I'm on pretty much all social media platforms at Emmi Fortin as well. And people can reach out on my website. You can book a discovery call. Let's have a conversation. That's where every good change starts, is just by thinking about it, talking about it, and just being imaginative about where you can take your life.
Thank you, Emmi. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.